Number 9. Secret Nazi Base. As the Nazis gained power during the late 1930s, they sent an expedition to Antarctica to survey the area and claim part of it for themselves. One of their goals was to find alternatives to oil and fat-based products like butter, milk, cream, lard, bacon, margarine, and candles, so they were prepared if Germany was cut off from imports during the war. Whale oil was a main ingredient of margarine at the time, so the Nazis figured it would be a potentially valuable resource. Until then, they had been buying whale oil from Norway, but they didn't want to give the country their business, so they built whaling ships and headed south towards Antarctica. The voyage set out in December 1938 and traveled towards an area now called Dronning Maudland, on the ship MS Schwabenland. But Norway beat the Germans to the site by about a month, and in early 1939, Norway claimed ownership of the region. Of course, the Nazis disputed this, and in August of that year, they named the area New Schwabenland after the expedition ship. They had 2 future voyages planned, but neither came to fruition during the escalating warfare between the Allies and the Axis powers. It's believed that the Germans planned to build a base in Antarctica, but this never happened, despite rumors to the contrary about a secret military facility called Base 22. The Nazis' claim to Antarctica was abandoned in 1945, and there are no signs that they traveled there after their initial expedition. But their decision to travel there reflected a little-known part of the World War II history that could have had a much different outcome. Number 8. Buried Mountains. In 2010, scientists revealed the existence of a massive mountain range hidden beneath the Antarctic ice, known as the Gomberstev Mountains. The peaks rise to over 8,000 feet and are buried beneath a layer of ice over a mile thick to the continent's eastern interior region. Russian scientists discovered the 750-mile range over a half-century earlier, but satellite images captured in recent years revealed the mountains in greater detail. The newer findings, which cover an area roughly the size of New York State, are like going from using a big, fat Sharpie to using a fine-tipped pencil, in the words of senior research scientist Robert Bell, who spoke with Live Science. These updated images expose a dramatic, rocky landscape filled with deep river valleys and liquid lakes. The mountain range is covered by a 6 million square mile layer of ice called the East Antarctic Ice Sheet. This poses important questions regarding the ice's potential to melt, as well as why and how the Gombertsev Mountains emerged in the first place. Scientists reported in 2011 that they were making headway in solving these mysteries. The Gombertsev Mountains resemble the Alps, suggesting that they're fairly old, yet their steep, rugged shape more closely resembles a young mountain range. Researchers detected magnetic anomalies similar to those found in 1-billion-year-old rocks nearby, implying that the mountain's origins date back to around the same time, when continents and subcontinents collided. Evidence further show that rifting events likely triggered the uplift of the range between 250 million and 100 million years ago. Solving the next piece of the puzzle will involve drilling through the ice and into the mountains to collect samples for data analysis. Number 7. Future plant life? Around 90 million years ago, during the age of the dinosaurs, West Antarctica was a lush, temperate rainforest that stood in stark contrast to its current barren and frozen landscape. Significantly lacking ice coverage, the continent had an annual mean temperature of 54 degrees Fahrenheit, and wildlife thrived, despite the annual 4 months of darkness that the continent undergoes. At the time, the world was experiencing its warmest climate in the past 140 million years. As today's world endures rapid climate change, experts are exploring the possibility that plants and insects could once again thrive in Antarctica. Professor Ian Hayes, an expert on Antarctic aquatic ecosystems, told Stuff that Antarctica's warmest areas are starting to merge with the coldest parts of the subantarctic, which he says is much more diverse when it comes to mosses, lichens, and flowering plants. Hayes explained the organisms have a much better chance of surviving their journey toward Antarctica as global temperatures rise. He said to expect to see life forms like plants and small invertebrates to appear on the continent first. Rodents would possibly come next, although it would take a long time for them to arrive after the most primitive organisms emerged. Some fish and crabs are already migrating southward towards Antarctica, while the climate is slowly becoming more hospitable to outsiders. It threatens to snuff out rare and fragile creatures that are found nowhere else on Earth. Scientists are still discovering new habitats throughout Antarctica, and they worry that any life forms within these environments will be wiped out before we ever even know about them. Number 6. Questionable cave entrance. You can always count on overly ambitious and imaginative Google Earth users to point out anything they think may represent a secret facility, an undiscovered archaeological site, or evidence of an extraterrestrial presence on Earth. Late last year, these internet sleuths called attention to what appeared to be an unidentified cave entrance on a remote Antarctic island, which allegedly first appeared in 2007. The door disappeared from Google Earth around 6 months after it was first spotted on Greenwich Island, fueling already rampant suspicions that the government of some country was hiding a secret. Conspiracy theories abounded, including allegations ranging from the possible existence of a top-secret military base to evidence of a lost ancient civilization, which the authorities might be trying to hide at all costs. Perhaps the most outrageous among these theories is the idea that the alleged secret portal leads to a so-called hollow Earth. The cave appeared to measure roughly 249 feet wide and 74 feet high, big enough to potentially fit hundreds or even thousands of people inside. Blake and Brett Cousins, who co-host the Third Phase from the Moon YouTube channel, speculated that perhaps a natural event such as a snowslide or climate change exposed and/or concealed the cave. They even went as far as suggesting that a rock formation outside the cave is a deliberately constructed staircase to its entrance. Naturally, everyone wanted to contribute to their 2 cents, especially those who are skeptical of modern science. Since the story broke, however, the so-called cave entrance has failed to regain the attention of international headlines. What do you think the hole was? A secret base? An ancient cave? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe button if you haven't already. Number 5. Doomsday Glacier. Antarctic ice sinks at a constant frequency of 5 Hz, according to a 2018 study analyzing 2 years' worth of seismic recordings on the Ross Ice Shelf. The humming noise, which cannot be heard by the human ear, is caused by regional and local winds and is affected by surface snow, ice, storms shifting the position of the dunes, and excessive melting, says Live Science. Scientists discovered the noise unexpectedly between 2014 and 2017 after installing seismic monitors on the ice shelf for other purposes. Upon reviewing the data, they realized that the active winds blowing over the uneven Antarctic surface caused near-constant vibrations in the uppermost layer of the snow, collectively known as a seismic hum. Study author Julien Chaput described the phenomenon as sounding like someone constantly playing a flute. Certain conditions, including dune-altering storms and warming events, can cause subtle changes in the seismic hum. But tracking the ice shelf's song, scientists may be able to monitor important changes in the surface ice, and they may even be able to develop a warning system for if and when the Ross Ice Shelf becomes vulnerable to collapse. Number 4. A lost city? At certain times in the distant past, Antarctica was mostly or entirely ice-free. During the Cretaceous period, around 90 million years ago, amid a severe episode of global warming, the southerly continent hosted dense plant life that was adapted to surviving through 4 months of annual darkness. The idea that prehistoric humans lived in Antarctica is far-fetched, but many conspiracy theorists cling to this notion, despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary. One popular theory, known as crustal displacement, claims that parts of Antarctica were ice-free as recently as 12,000 years ago, and that humans may have lived there before the onset of the last ice age wiped them out. This idea laid the groundwork for the even more outrageous claim that the fabled lost city of Atlantis was located in Antarctica, even though modern experts largely reject the idea that it even existed to begin with. Photos taken during NASA's Operation Icebridge project in 2016 show what armchair experts believe are the ruins of an ancient city. Around the same time, a video that an alleged missing camera crew left behind in 2002 showed the supposed remains of a prehistoric human settlement on the continent. Not surprisingly, the video conspicuously lacks credible, traceable sources, which only gave way to even more incredulous rumors about government cover-ups and Nazi claims to Antarctic territory. Wild stories like this leave someone with 2 choices: to either hop aboard the pseudo-archaeology train or to err on the side of more factual, albeit less exciting, claims. Number 3. Mummified Penguins. While working at Cape Irizar on the Scott coast of the Ross Sea in 2016, ornithologist, bird expert, Stephen Emsley discovered dozens of dead penguins, including some that were long deceased and even mummified. Emsley was visiting the site after rumors of guano, bird poop, stains in the area. Despite no known penguin colonies, piqued his interest. He noticed the guano stains soon after arriving and found the penguin carcasses shortly thereafter. The corpses consisted mainly of chicks and were of the Antill penguin species, which lives in nests built from pebbles along the coastline. Emsley took samples of some of the remains for radiocarbon analysis to determine their age. He was under the impression that some of the bodies were fresh, but the result revealed that some of the dead penguins were between 800 and 5,000 years old. They were preserved by the ice, which had only recently melted due to climate change and revealed the long-dead colony. Emsley found that there were 3 distinct periods of penguin occupation at the site. The first was sometime between 5,146 and 2,750 years ago. The second lasted from 2,340 years ago to 1,375 years ago, and the third dates back between 1,100 and 800 years ago. He believes that the most recent colony fled during the 14th century amid the onset of a period known as the Little Ice Age. Unfortunately, ice and snow blocked the birds from reaching the ocean. It appears as though no penguin colonies have nested at the site in quite some time, but this could change in the near future, according to penguin ecologist David Ainley, who told the New York Times that as global temperatures rise, small flocks of adelies are spotted wandering in the area increasingly frequently, and they are even occasionally seen nesting there. Number 2. Pyramids. In 2016, images of what seemed like man-made pyramids in Antarctica's Ellsworth Range went viral, sparking rumors that an ancient civilization built the structures around 100 million years ago, long before the earliest known human ancestors emerged into existence. These alleged human-crafted pyramids are around 4,000 feet tall, roughly 10 times the height of the Great Pyramid of Giza. These claims appear to have originated on a website called Earth, We Are One, which credits a photo from 1935 as evidence that a prehistoric society built the structure way before even our most distant evolutionary relatives walked the planet. Citing credible evidence of previous plant and bacterial life on Antarctica, Earth We Are One guided its followers on a woefully misleading path that suggests the ancient vegetation is a direct indicator of having past human residence. But the existence of plants and bacteria does not necessarily mean that people once populated Antarctica. Much to the dismay of over-imaginative conspiracy theorists the world over, it turns out that pyramidal peaked structures, in other words, natural formations that look like man-made pyramids, are a common feature of glaciated regions, formed from multiple ice sheets converging. They're entirely a product of the Earth's geological forces. And number 1, Antarctic Pollenia. The amount of ice in the Antarctic region waxes and wanes in accordance with the seasons. In a phenomenon known as Pollenia, chunks of ice that are sometimes as big as the United States go missing from the ice pack. This happened in 2017, when a hole roughly the size of Ireland formed during the continent's coldest months, when ice is at its thickest. Known as the Maud-Rise Pollenia, it's located in a difficult-to-access part of Antarctica's Lazarev Sea. In an effort to get to the bottom of how and why the hole formed, experts relied on satellite observations and previous data. They concluded that a combination of cyclones and strong winds created the Pollenia by causing pack ice to shift in opposed directions. The Maud-Rise Pollenia was the size of Connecticut when scientists began monitoring it. It expanded by over 740% over the following month and eventually merged with the open ocean. Before the 2017 observations, researchers only knew of Pollenias happening in Antarctica as recently as the 1970s amid the advent of satellite technology. They were baffled by the phenomenon. Study leader Diana Francis explained that mid-sea Pollenias can impact the climate both regionally and globally and can interfere with ocean circulation. She predicted an increase in the frequency of Pollenias due to climate change, citing the established connection between Pollenias and cyclones. Past studies show that polar cyclonic activities tend to intensify in warmer climates, making the changing condition conducive to the creation of Pollenias. Other studies have bolstered Francis's theory that climate anomalies in the southern hemisphere intensify the conditions under which Pollenias form, but scientists are admittedly still trying to understand this rare phenomenon.
Number 10. Aayum Shenrio. In Tokyo, Japan on March 20th, 1995, one of the worst cult attacks in the country occurred. 5 bags filled with toxic liquid nerve agents were left on board 5 trains in one of the biggest cities in the world on the busiest underground systems in existence. And the bags were leaking. Nobody knew what was happening at first. Passengers on board the trains felt their eyes stinging. Then in seconds, those on board the trains were choking and vomiting. Some were left blinded, and some fell to the floor paralyzed. It was absolutely terrifying. When the dust settled and the trains were stopped and everybody got off, 13 people were dead and 5,800 were seriously injured. The attacks were coordinated on 3 separate train lines. What exactly was used to injure these perfectly innocent people that were simply going to work in the morning? It was something called sarin, a devastating nerve agent first developed over 40 years earlier by the Nazis. All these years later, the 1995 Tokyo attack is still the worst domestic terrorist attack to ever happen on Japanese soil. Now for the cult. The people responsible went by the name Aayum Shenrio, a French religious group who believed the world was about to end and decided they would take some people out a bit early. They kidnapped, they injured, they killed, and they used chemical and biological weapons to attack wherever they possibly could. Their leader, Shoko Asahara, was captured and put to death. Many other members of the cult were also executed by Japanese authorities, and by the 2000s the cult had gone underground. Number 9. Rajnish Purum. Rajnish Purum was one of the craziest cults that ever impacted the United States of America. This French cult rose and collapsed in the 1980s in Central Oregon. The cult was based around a man named Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh. He created a religious community supposedly centered around free love and meant to be a utopia. Believe it or not, the cult was pretty far ahead of the curve when it came to things like organic farming and recycling. At first, everything was fine. Thousands of people joined the cult and millions of dollars were raised by the followers. They even had their very own commune where people lived in what they believed was a utopia. But by 1983, things started to go really off the rails, and in 1984, the cult was responsible for the largest bioterrorist attack that ever happened on US soil. Cult members coordinated an attack to infect salad bars. That's right, ordinary salad bars in 10 restaurants throughout Wasco County. They infected the salad bars with salmonella in a bizarre attempt to incapacitate the voters in the city so that their own people could win the local elections. Nobody died from the poisoning, though at least 751 people were infected. A string of other crimes would ultimately bring the cult to its knees. There was immigration fraud, voting fraud, attempted murder, arson, and drug smuggling. Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh was forced to leave the US because of charges put against him, and his followers quickly abandoned the cult. The ranch they lived on was sold at auction in 1988 for $4.5 million. Number 8. Heaven's Gate. The cult of Heaven's Gate in the United States was the first of the modern era to use the internet to share their bizarre beliefs and to also make money from them. The cult was originally formed in the 1970s, but didn't really hit its stride for another 20 years. It was founded by Marshall Applewhite and Bonnie Nettles, who renamed themselves Bo and Peep. But just what did this weird cult believe in? Well, Applewhite told his followers that he was in fact the second coming of Jesus Christ and that God was an alien. The followers also believed they were living in the end of times and that they would probably have to battle demons before all was said and done. The cult didn't really do much except try to recruit more members and run around the country lecturing people about how UFOs were about to make contact with humans. They just drove around, recruited, and brainwashed people. The grand finale came in 1997. 39 members, including Applewhite, dressed themselves in tracksuits and sneakers and slurped up applesauce laced with vodka and poison. They then laid down, put bags over their heads, and died. The hope was that they would ascend to a spacecraft as it passed over Earth. Instead, aliens never showed up, the world didn't end, and they were buried in the ground. Number 7. Atheria Society. The Atheria Society started in the 1950s when an English taxi driver by the name of George King allegedly received a directive from outer space. Apparently, the dispatch from space convinced him to start this weird cult. It's a religious group whose main purpose is to communicate with aliens to better human society. The craziest part is that they're actually still around today. The Atheria Society isn't dangerous, they don't practice hate, and they don't drink the Kool-Aid. Instead, they're a legitimately established religion. It's just that they believe in aliens and space people. Nobody knows exactly how many people are part of the Atheria Society, but we do know that they have at least 35 centers spread across the 5 major continents. The Atheria Society is an international community in full operation right now, as you're watching this video. They don't threaten anybody, they're just a little strange. They try to send out spiritual energy to reach the aliens whom they wish to cooperate with out in the universe, whom they refer to as their cosmic masters. Number 6. Love Has Won. Love Has Won began roughly 15 years ago after a woman named Amy Carlson abandoned her family to pursue a life of teaching spiritual ascension to dedicated followers. Depending on who you ask, Amy Carlson is 19 billion years old. Also depending on who you ask, she birthed all of creation and has been reincarnated 534 times. Throughout these reincarnations, she lived briefly as Jesus Christ, Marilyn Monroe, and Cleopatra. You may be thinking to yourself, who in their right mind would believe such audacious claims? The answer is more than you'd expect. The cult didn't really do much. So far as anyone can gather, Amy Carlson was an alcoholic lunatic who demanded that her followers did whatever she said. She's also been accused of abusing the members of her cult, of which about 20 core members lived alongside her in a large house. To be completely honest, the group has done absolutely nothing of note except get kicked out of Hawaii for being crazy. The weirdest thing that happened so far came in 2021 when police in Colorado went to the house of the cult to make a wellness check. They found Amy Carlson dead, wrapped in a sleeping bag, coiled in Christmas lights, and her empty eye sockets filled with glitter. It was pretty nasty, and according to The Independent, 7 arrests were made and some people were charged with the abuse of a corpse. The cult is still around even without Amy, but all they do is upload weird videos on YouTube. Number 5. The Antill Kids. Roche Thoreau wanted to save himself and his dedicated followers from the incoming apocalypse. He was absolutely convinced that there would be a war between the forces of good and evil, and that it would eventually cause the complete collapse of the world as we know it. As a youngster, he converted to the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Then one day, he decided to form his own group. He named it the Antill Kids, apparently because they were going to work hard just like ants. In 1977, the group formed a commune where they had planned to live free from sin and in perfect harmony. If this sounds familiar, that's because it's how every cult starts. But like every other cult, this one quickly spiraled out of control. They were kicked out of the Adventist church for being too weird. Roche Thoreau then forbade his followers from contacting their families. Soon after, he developed a violent drinking problem. Like most belligerent drunks in a seat of power, Roche got mean. He would spy on his followers, hit them with belts and hammers, tie them up, and hang them from the ceiling, and it was even reported that he did things like, well, I can't really repeat that here. By 1979, this guy was completely insane. He forced his commune into the Canadian wilderness, and his reign of terror continued. He gathered himself a group of dedicated women and fathered 26 children. At this point, it had nothing to do with religion. It became a kingdom of violence and abuse, as Roche forced members of his commune to break their own legs with sledgehammers, to eat each other's feces, and all kinds of really sick things. He ripped the teeth and limbs and fingers and toes off his own followers, even torturing them with a blowtorch. He also did horrible, truly unspeakable things to his own children. In the end, after killing multiple people, 2 of his own children, ripping someone's intestines out with his bare hands, using a blowtorch to disfigure someone, amputating a woman's arm with a hunting knife, then smashing in somebody's head with an axe, Roche was finally arrested and given life in prison. He was later murdered by an inmate. Number 4. The Fall River Cult. In 1979, a homeless girl named Doreen Levesque was found dead under the high school bleachers in Fall River, Massachusetts. She was only 17 years old. She was also found bound with fishing wire and her face caved in by a rock. At the time, there was a rumor that the girl's murder had ties to a satanic cult. The rumor was that the poor girl's soul was offered to the devil and that the leader of the terrifying cult was a sadistic pimp by the name of Carl Drew. Then 2 more young girls were killed and their bodies were discovered brutalized beyond recognition. Carl Drew was the main suspect, but the police didn't have much to go on. According to a former detective with the Fall River Police Department, there had been a lot of fear of Carl on the streets around the time. People were scared to speak out against him because he might seek retribution. Eventually, the police did have enough evidence collected, and they arrested Carl Drew and a man named Robin Murphy in connection with the murders, with Drew getting life in prison with no possibility of parole. Drew had apparently been running his small ring of prostitutes like a satanic coven, and was keeping the women he controlled in line by performing nighttime rituals. In the case of the murders, Drew took the whole Satan ritual thing too far, and he's still rotting in jail to this day. Number 3. True Russian Orthodox Church. In 2007, a small group of Doomsday cult members belonging to a group they referred to as the True Russian Orthodox Church barricaded themselves in a cave in a snowy forest 400 miles, 644 kilometers from Moscow to sit and wait for the end of the world. Yes, there are crazy cults all over the place, not just in the US. This weird Russian organization was put together by a man named Peter Kuznetsov. He somehow managed to convince 29 people to barricade themselves in the cave with 100 gallons, 380 liters of gasoline, which they threatened to use to blow themselves up if police tried to kick them out. Unsurprisingly, the self-declared prophet Peter was not actually there with them. But what were the beliefs of the cult, and why were they in a cave? They believed that upon death, they would earn a special place in the afterlife where they themselves would be the judges of who went to heaven or hell. The followers were not allowed to watch TV, they couldn't have any money, and they were forbidden from listening to the radio. A few weeks after barricading themselves in the cave, part of it collapsed and 14 members gave themselves up to the police. 5 days later, the leader of the group became manic after he realized his prediction of the world ending was wrong. As of 2016, he was still locked up in the psychiatric ward. Number 2. Order of the Solar Temple. The Order of the Solar Temple is quite unique in that it did not attract the less fortunate or the desperate, as is the case with most of the cults we've talked about today. Instead, the order was composed of elite members of society. It even had a specific membership price which most people would never be able to afford. It was a cult of millionaires, doctors, police, and other high-standing members of society. The order reached its peak in the 1990s and was a weird mixture of evangelical Christianity and Freemasonry. They were hoping to recreate the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, a secret society from the 19th century that practiced occult magic. And even though these were the elite members of society, they were still susceptible to crazy ideas. They too thought that an apocalypse was nigh. In fact, they still do because the order is still around today. The Order of the Solar Temple is most famous for what happened in 1994. Tony Dutoit's infant son was taken by the leaders of the group to their headquarters and stabbed to death with a wooden stake after the leader of the cult, Dimambro, decreed the baby the Antichrist. Shortly after, 2 mass murders took place in 2 small villages in Switzerland, with Dimambro and 12 of his followers performing a ritual Last Supper. 15 members drank poison and died, 30 were shot in the head or smothered, and 8 more died under strange and suspicious circumstances. Number 1. The Mickey Mouse Club. The first meeting of the Mickey Mouse Club was December 21, 1929. This wasn't a scary murder cult, it was simply a club created by Walt Disney himself to help kids, though it did have a cult-like status. What did the club do for its members? They offered to train young talent for TV and theater. In reality, Disney was forming an army of child stars to grab America's attention while paying them mere pennies. The kids that became part of the Mickey Mouse Club were usually given a contract with a base payment per week, and the option for Disney to drop them at any time and for any reason. The result was that Disney had an abundance of child stars being trained for performances at Disneyland, promotional events, children's hospitals, and everything else under the sun. It was a dog-eat-dog world where the kids struggled to be the best while making very little money and often being kicked out of the club for no reason. Number 11. Glow-in-the-dark mushrooms. The world is home to nearly 100 known bioluminescent mushroom species. The newest one, known as Roridomyces philostocades, was discovered late last year in northeastern India as part of a scientific project to document mushroom species. The fungus was spotted along a stream during monsoon season in August 2020, according to the India Times. Locals already knew about the fungus, which they call electric mushrooms. A local led researchers to it in the middle of the night and instructed them to put their torches out. Several of the light-emitting mushrooms instantly began to glow. Only the mushroom stalks are bioluminescent, which made the team realize that it might be a new species. They took the samples back to their lab and, sure enough, their suspicions proved correct. It's also the first species of its genus ever found in India, and one of just a handful of growing fungi ever found in the country. But there are probably more out there just waiting to be discovered. Number 10. Hidden Cemetery. You may be surprised to learn that there are historic cemeteries in many places throughout the world that have been forgotten over time. One was recently discovered in West Greenwich, Rhode Island by a man named Brian Page, who had just purchased the land that the graveyard is located on. He stumbled upon the cemetery after following an ungated path into the forest. Speaking with news station WPRI, Page said that his family had no idea that the burial ground was on his property, and he described feeling pretty shocked about it. At just 1,545 square miles, 4,002 kilometers squared, Rhode Island is the smallest state in the U.S., yet it has over 3,200 historical cemeteries, including the one that Page discovered. In the records, it's simply labeled as Historic Cemetery 96. It was lost for about a century, as evidenced by the toppling headstones and overgrowth of vegetation that Page observed. Understanding the site's historical importance, he summoned his friends and family to help restore it. They spent hours tidying the graveyard up, and Page continues to maintain it to this day. But the most exciting discovery came after the landowner noticed that 3 headstones in the cemetery belonged to people with the last name Gates. Through Ancestry.com, Page traced all 3 to billionaire Bill Gates' family. Number 9. Bizarre wartime climate anomaly. Over 8.5 million soldiers died during World War I, but warfare alone was not the only cause of death. According to a study published last year, a unique weather system that scientists describe as a 1 in 100-year climate anomaly lingered throughout Europe from 1914 to 1919. And it dramatically increased the war's casualties. The atypical weather system was coincidentally most active right before or during some of the war's biggest battles. It caused torrential rain and uncharacteristically cold temperatures. Battlefields at Verdun, the Somme, Ypres, and elsewhere became waterlogged, causing some of the war's most major losses of life. Many soldiers died from disease or drowned in mud holes. Others stood in water for days and developed trench foot or frostbite. The most dangerous conditions that the thick mud created also slowed soldiers and their horses down and made it difficult to move equipment. Research claims that the climate anomaly worsened the war by making the environment even more dangerous. Scientists also blame the weather system for worsening the 1918 influenza pandemic, commonly and inaccurately called the Spanish flu. In fact, experts think the weather system might have even started the pandemic by altering the migration behavior of ducks, which are known to carry the virus. Normally, the ducks migrate to Russia every year. Instead, they stayed in one place, putting them and their feces in close proximity to human populations and possibly contaminating local water supplies. Number 8. Buran test shuttles. If you had the chance to check out an abandoned space shuttle, would you do it? You know, a project originally designed to send human beings to another planet. It sounds like the adventure of a lifetime. But the Buran program was a Soviet space shuttle project that ran from 1974 to 1993. It was launched in response to the development of the U.S. space shuttle with its goal to design a reusable spacecraft. The Buran Orbiter 1K1 shuttle only completed one uncrewed orbit before the program was suspended indefinitely due to the high costs it came with. President Boris Yeltsin officially canceled the project in 1993, a few years after the Soviet Union collapsed. The shuttle was called the Orbiter 1K1 and was destroyed in a different hangar of the same complex, which in 2002 collapsed, tragically killing 8 workers. 2 of the prototypes are kept in an abandoned hangar in Kazakhstan called the Baikonur Cosmodrome, which is still an active site today. But the test spacecrafts are still there, frozen in time and mostly forgotten, besides a few urban explorers that know about the site. A film director named Alexander Kunas walked 24 miles, 38.6 kilometers through the desert to reach the hangar and spent 3 nights sleeping in the area, according to Cater's news agency. But the site is secured, so he had to sneak in the middle of the night and understood that he was risking getting into some trouble. It turned out to be worth it because he managed to snap some fascinating photos of the prototypes. Number 7. Egypt's Lost Golden City. Earlier this year, Egypt's Ministry of Antiquities announced the discovery of ruins from the so-called Lost Golden City of Luxor. Dating back over 3,000 years, the ancient city was found buried in the sand by a team of archaeologists who were looking for King Tut's mortuary temple. According to excavation leader Zahi Hawass, it's the largest ancient Egyptian city ever discovered. Other researchers had tried and failed to find the city many times before. The team first realized they had found something important when they encountered zigzagging mud walls measuring as high as 10 feet, 3 meters. Archaeologist Betsy Bryan described the site as the most important discovery in Egypt since King Tut's tomb was found in 1922. The Golden City will help experts better understand life during Egypt's Golden Age, according to Hawass, who spoke with NBC. So far, the team has unearthed rings, scarabs, pottery, tools, and other artifacts which date back between 1391 and 1353 BC during the reign of Amenhotep III. The site contains storage houses, grinding stones, and areas for meat production, offering an unprecedented glimpse into everyday life in an ancient Egyptian industrial city. The archaeologists also found a skeleton with outstretched arms and a rope around the person's knees. They have yet to come up with an explanation for the odd burial and have several other lingering questions about the site, which they hope will be answered during future digs. Number 6. Water on the Moon. Late last year, NASA confirmed that water has finally been discovered on the Moon. The agency's Stratospheric Observatory for Infrared Astronomy, nicknamed SOFIA, detected the H2O in the Moon's southern hemisphere in a sunlit area called the Clavius Crater. Altogether, the discovery amounted to the equivalent of a 12-ounce bottle of water. It defies previous findings that any water molecules on the Moon would be in cold, unlit regions. Researchers wrote that while the new information changes their understanding of the distribution of the Moon's water molecules, they still do not believe that water could be present anywhere on the Moon. After all, it wasn't a lot of water. To give you an idea, the Sahara Desert has roughly 100 times more water than what was found on the Moon, and that's one of the driest places on Earth. But it's still a major discovery, leaving experts with new questions to find the answers to, including how the moon's water is created and how it withstands the harsh lunar environment. Scientists had long suspected that there's water on the moon, but they only detected it in the form of ice in the 20 years leading up to this recent discovery. The news came along with an announcement from NASA that it plans to put astronauts back on the moon in 2024 and to establish a consistent presence there by 2030. If you have the opportunity to go to space, would you take it? Let us know in the comments down below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 5. Prehistoric Turtle. While inspecting the ruins of an old church in Christchurch, New Zealand, a sculptor named Paul Deans discovered a 35-million-year-old fossil of a turtle embedded in the core of a limestone pillar. The Oxford Terrace Baptist Church was built between 1881 and 1882. It suffered severe damage in a series of earthquakes in 2011 and was then demolished. The building's pillars were hollowed out and sent to Deans, who planned to use them for his work. This led him to the unexpected discovery. According to Dr. Paul Schofield, who is a senior curator of natural history at the Canterbury Museum, the unnamed ancient turtle species resembles another turtle fossil that a builder found while quarrying limestone in Oamaru in 1880. He concluded that both fossils were probably extracted from the same quarry and may even contain parts of the same animal. Speaking with stuff.co.nz, Schofield explained, turtle fossils are really rare in New Zealand. He also said that no other turtle fossils have been found at the quarry in the last 150 years. Scientists are studying the newly discovered piece. They plan to examine microfossils surrounding the turtle to determine if the two fossils are from the same animal. Schofield speculated that the prehistoric species was a sea turtle similar in size to the modern-day leatherback turtle, which grows up to 7.2 feet, 2.2 meters long. It lived between 65.5 million to 23 million years ago, when New Zealand was covered in shallow seawater. Number 4. Spy Boat. In late 2020, a high-end solar-powered spy boat washed ashore on the remote Scottish island of Atheria. Beachgoers discovered the mysterious vehicle near a military base between some large rocks and contacted the Coast Guard. Only the US Navy and the British Royal Navy used that particular model of boat, called a wave glider spy vessel. Yet nobody ever came forward to claim it. The boat is not equipped with lights, leading some to believe that it was used for illicit purposes. One theory suggests that the boat is a Russian-made replica of the wave glider and that it was perhaps in the area to spy on the British military. And it's true that the Russian military developed a vessel like this in 2016 known as the Fugu, but the claims about Russia being responsible for the unidentified boat remain unsubstantiated. It makes sense that a spy boat would be near Atheria, which is along a route that British nuclear submarines would take to reach the North Atlantic. But for now, nobody knows whose boat it is and why or how it ended up there. Number 3. Hidden Frescos. A few years ago, Tufts University professor Christina Moranci traveled to Armenia to investigate archaeological sites that are typically off-limits to researchers. She found herself hiding from local police inside the Marin Cathedral, where she suspected that something was written beneath the plaster on the walls. Moranci took some photos and used Photoshop to enhance their obscured features. She discovered traces of hidden frescoes and inscriptions that are invisible to the naked eye, including an ox in the church's apse. The adventurous historian believes the image is an early 11th century depiction of the biblical figure Ezekiel with an ox, a lion, a man, and an angel, the symbols of the four evangelists Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. But Moranci admitted that she's just speculating, and that more investigation is needed to confirm the fresco's age and meaning. Moranci was not particularly interested in frescoes when she made the discovery, but the finding inspired her to investigate other old churches for similar features. She credits Photoshop, a widely available program, for helping her to find the concealed frescoes, but also said that it's important for a researcher to know what they're looking for. Moranci continues to study her findings and hopes to overcome several obstacles surrounding the discovery, including legal policies that prevent researchers from exploring valuable sites in the region. Number 2. Medieval Tunnel. While digging a hole for a new power line pole in Monmouthshire, Wales earlier this year, electrical workers discovered a mysterious network of tunnels running beneath a 12th century abbey. Situated along a stream, the tunnel system is just 4 feet, 1.2 meters tall. There's no record of it being built, leaving archaeologists baffled about what the tunnels were used for or how big the network is. The system does not appear on any maps created by the UK's mapping agency, which date back to the 18th century. This explains why the power company had permission to dig at an archaeological site that they normally wouldn't have been allowed to dig at. The tunnels may be connected to the nearby Tintern Abbey. This so-called national icon of Wales was built in 1131. It fell into disrepair after King Henry VIII closed down monasteries during the 16th century, which could possibly be why the tunnels are absent from historical records. The network could also be associated with the ruins of old furnaces and ironworks in the area. Technician Alan Gore, who participated in the discovery, said that he's been involved in other excavations of old wells and cellars that are not documented, but that the tunnels are by far the most exciting and impressive find that he's been a part of. The electrical work was rerouted, and archaeologists plan to thoroughly excavate the system in hopes of learning more about its origins. Number 1. Ancient fish. A group of geologists discovered the remarkably well-preserved bones of an ancient fish while studying sediment cores that were collected from coastal lakes in Norway. The fossil belonged to a species called the three-spined stickleback fish. It lived in brackish waters around 12,000 years ago, a time when the lake it was found in was nearly but not entirely disconnected from the sea. After the ice sheets melted at the end of the last ice age, coastlines throughout the northern hemisphere experienced an uplift, creating inland lakes that effectively cut the three-spined stickleback off from the ocean. A recent study revealed that stickleback populations in separate places evolved to survive in their new freshwater environments. In a phenomenon known as parallel evolution, both experienced similar changes in behavior, function, and appearance. Scientists typically rely on modern-day species for learning about parallel evolution. The rare opportunity to study these types of changes in an ancient animal eliminated some of the guesswork that comes with identifying ancient and modern evolutionary traits. For the study, the team extracted DNA from 2 prehistoric stickleback fish and compared the results against modern specimens. They found that the ancient fish already had genetic variants that resulted from their adjustments to freshwater. These findings are helping experts to better learn the ways evolution occurs over thousands or even tens of thousands of years, and are helping to fill in some of the gaps of evolutionary timelines. Thanks for watching. Which one of these discoveries would you be most excited about? Let us know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed today's video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time for another amazing video right here on American Eye.